one way. And so
That
if you die...
That is one way to do it, but it's in a position that I think is awkward to lean on. You'd be moving back and forth. Because think about, like, this train, in less than 10 minutes, it made 5 stops. The longer trains, maybe a guy could get away with that.
I'm sorry.
In an arc.
The arc went away from you?
Towards you.
Yeah, so you're in the middle. And
you could, if it was in the middle position, low gear, you could do that. Not so easy when it's in the 9 o'clock position, which is the high gear, because you're going to rotate the train between low and high gear for speed based on what you're doing.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that I'll just go ahead and mention right now is that I have an issue with the idea that he would have ever gotten into high gear given the shortness of this route. It's 10 minutes.
The trains accelerate quite quickly, and it sounds to me like they come up to speed very fast. And to be able to make those stops in that time, it sounds like you have to go from the 6 o'clock low gear to the 9 o'clock position high gear quite frequently, because you're ramping the train up and then you're ramping it back.
Okay.
If you kept it in low gear, you would never be on time.
His shtick was shutting it off and coasting all the way up. You can see where he'd want to give it a little blast of speed.
Yeah, he'd want to be in high gear and then knock it back to full neutral and just coast his way on in.
Okay.
So let's go with, in the mechanical failure theory, the first theory is that there was a bad brake valve. And I'm going to get into more descriptions of how stuff on these trains worked, and I apologize.
Well, no, that's simply not true, because the tube system, they said afterwards that they examined the whole brake system and it was just flawless.
That is not entirely accurate, Joe.
They seem to believe that there was absolutely nothing mechanically wrong with that train at all.
Okay, so
that's what they said. Anyway.
I know. And to follow on what Joe's getting at, that's the official inquest into the accident, which what they did, the brakes on the train are electro-pneumatic, which is a fancy way of saying they are air brakes that are electronically controlled.
And that was actually they had 2 sets of brakes on the train.
Yes, there's the Westinghouse, which is basically a kind of a hard brake system, and then the air brake system.
The electro-pneumatic one also.
The EP it's referred to. So we're just going to call it the air brakes for the moment. But the air brake system runs through the entire length of the train, and because it's an air system, it's very simple in theory. There's a tank that has pressure in it, and when the driver or a passenger pulls the right handle, the pressure pours into the tube system that controls the brakes, and that pressure then activates the brakes, which would then compress on the wheels. So just like when you step on the brake in your car, if it was done by air. That's the simplest version of this, except it's an air system, so it has a bunch of valves in it to be able to turn things off, to disconnect it. And in the inquest, they noted that there was a couple of valves that were broken, and they presumed were broken because of the accident, because they say they took all of the lines off of the train and they reassembled them, and when they brought the system up to pressure, it came up to pressure. But it sounds like they also replaced the broken valves to do so, but I don't see anything that says that they actually tested those valves. So I wonder if there is a scenario where a valve goes bad, it therefore dumps all the pressure in the tank. So think of an air compressor. If it's got no pressure in it and you hit the button, nothing happens.
It's useless, yeah.
And poor Newson is sitting there driving the train, and he's pulling on the lever, and nothing is happening. It's a situation where I could see a guy just pulling, praying to God that the stupid thing will kick in. Like you always see it in the movies, when the brakes fail, somebody's rapidly stomping on the brake pedal trying to get, and he's doing the same thing with the brake handle, trying to get the stupid thing to disengage.
Well, and I kind of wonder too how he should have known, but maybe he didn't know how far he had to go before the tunnel dead ended.
He should know.
Yeah, I mean, my 2 problems with that are, like, there's got to be a backup auxiliary emergency system somewhere.
It's called the Westinghouse.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the other one is, it was reported that he coasted in to his stops. So why would he be going full throttle when he should have been easing off the throttle 5 minutes ago or whatever?
Unless the throttle's stuck.
Well, and that's a different theory. So the passengers said that it felt like and the witnesses said it looked like and felt like the train was accelerating. But it may have been up to speed, and it could have been going 30 or 40 miles an hour, and with no braking, you're just like, oh my God, crap's flying by, because you've been in a subway, and you see things whizzing by, but it's dark, and you don't really have a good impression of your speed. But suddenly, when there's things for frame of reference, you're like, holy crap, we're speeding up. Oh, wait, no, we're slowing down. Like I could see the other side of the coin to what you're saying.
Sure. I mean, I don't know that that's the other side of the coin to what I'm saying, but maybe.
You're saying, why was the train speeding up?
No, I'm just saying, why was it going that fast at all? If he was known to coast in, he should have eased up on the throttle much earlier. And if the braking system's not working, he still should be slowing down because he's coasting in, because he's not hitting the throttle anymore.
In theory, all he needed to do was let go of the throttle.
Yeah.
True, in theory.
So that's what I'm saying is, like, that's the big problem I have with that, is that it sounds like he wasn't a big user of the brakes anyway. So why was he going 30, 40 miles an hour when he hit that station when he should have been coasting in, by all reports of the way he drove?
He should have
the train.
let off the power much earlier. To be,
Well, it wasn't just bad brakes, obviously, something else. But
something
the
else
brakes
had to have been going on.
Maybe didn't work either. The brakes theoretically should have been able to stop it no matter what.
Theoretically, they should have. And so we haven't talked about this, but these trains officially got examined for maintenance reasons on quite a rigorous schedule. This is officially speaking. They were looked at once a week. I think it was basically once a quarter, and then any major overhaul work was done once a year. And according to the records, this train was spotless. It had gone through its weekly review the night before the accident.
Although there were accusations of falsifications of records.
Well,
talk about that. So because that's it. What is the name of the guy that
there's a guy named Anthony Bright who used to work for the Tube System, and he's posted a lot of interesting stuff on the web about
He's
this.
made a lot of accusations.
Well, I was just gonna go ahead and preface this by saying anything that was commissioned in 1938, right? That's when this train was commissioned.
The train was constructed?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know that this is an individual one. That's when they first started building them.
It was 38 stock.
So it could have been built in the 40s or God
yeah.
knows when. I mean, yeah.
But that it's at least, 20, 30 years old. It's not going to be spotless.
Oh, no.
No matter what, there's going to be
components would have been replaced on a regular basis. Engines and brakes and wheels and stuff like that. And even the interiors were replaced.
I'm just casting aspersions on the fact that it was quote-unquote spotless. There's going to be minor things that needed to have happened.
So I guess what I mean when I say spotless is there's always a lemon in the bunch. There's always that one car, number 52. Look, 52 broke down again. Big shocker there.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. That kind of when I say that. It was a regular train. It didn't have any major issues. It got its maintenance, officially speaking, and it didn't have any problems.
Okay,
but the accusations that Joe found in the comments section that I didn't go into say quite the different story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, he said a lot of the maintenance staff at Neasden, I guess that's where they did the maintenance, he said they were stealing the batteries, stealing the mercury from these retarders that were part of the braking system. Basically anything else, as he said, they could sell to the scrappy. Mm-hmm. To quote him. So he said instead of maintaining the trains, they were spending their work time stealing from the trains.
He also makes the accusation, which I find interesting because this goes into the next theory, which is, I call it the engine theory. One of the things he says that these cars were coupled together in threes. So there were three cars. So 3 cars locked together, then another 3 cars connected to that. That's how we have the first 3 cars and the rear 3 cars. Mm-hmm. And according to him, you could only drive on the head and the tail, or from the head and the tail of that 3-car system, even though these cars were technically designed so that any of those 3 cars could be the head or tail of a group. Because of mechanical issues, they had permanently coupled them together so they could scavenge the controls from the middle car and the interior of the front and rear car to have stuff for the fronts, because there were some mechanical issues with the actual driver lever system, according to him.
Yeah, no, he said that they were worn out and they needed to be replaced, and so they basically they scavenged parts from the train. And he also said, as far as the broken valve theory goes, he says it could have been like a loose or a defective valve. They said also the valves are throughout the train. He said somebody opening a valve deliberately or inadvertently could also sabotage the brake system, whether somebody meant to or not.
Being a prankster or just
either
a
prankster
fool and not realizing they were causing a mistake.
Or deliberate sabotage.
So that brings, you know what, so I hadn't thought about that until just now. But you remember we talked about the 18-year-old kid who was the guard on the train?
Yeah.
One of the things he told the inquest when they said, something about why didn't you pull the handle and initiate the Westinghouse brakes and stop the train, is he said, well, he had gone to the other end of the train and was rooting around looking for newspapers to read because obviously it was boring. And then he was reading the paper, not paying attention. That's why he didn't pull the brake handle. But what I'm getting at here is if the trains are in the tail section cab and he is rooting around, possible he could have knocked a valve.
He could have accidentally done it too, or he could have.
I mean, I'm not blaming this kid at all, but it just suddenly that dawned on me from that stuff that you're looking at right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if he had actually, if he had actually understood the operation of it, when apparently, according to Anthony Bright, if a failure of the electro-pneumatic system, what that causes is a discharge of air from the system into the driver's cab, which he said can be unpleasant because it's like not just air, but it has like
it's gonna have particles.
It's gonna have dust and
grease
and oil droplets and things like that in it. So it could have been either a spiteful prank, because I had heard that the two of them, Harris and Newsom, didn't necessarily get along that well.
Which is funny because a lot of the times it's referred to as they had an okay working relationship. They just were massively different in ages. So
or it could have been intended as kind of a fun little prank.
Yeah.
So
he's gonna get this little blast of air.
Blast his little cab area with all this crap.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, and maybe so it could have been inadvertent.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's possible, right, that there was that it was intended as if he understood that you would get like the blast of air in the cab. He didn't understand that while you give that blast of air in the cab, you functionally just decimate the brake system.
You reduce the pressure, therefore the brakes can't work.
I mean, so that's certainly possible as well.
But of course that doesn't account for the continued, even if the train wasn't accelerating into the station, if it was still going the same speed, the lack of brakes doesn't really account for that.
So they're part of the theory of the engines that I'm looking at. One of the things that I was looking at was the possibility of the fact that the speed lever was actually stuck in the 9 o'clock position because the drive shaft, and I'm presuming that they are referring to the drive shaft of that lever itself, was broken. And they said, well, we think that that's broken because of the impact of the train into the end of the tunnel, which is logical.
Yeah.
I admit this, but I also wonder if it is a scenario where it is a weakened drive shaft of that lever and he puts it into high and it's the control rod snaps internally and suddenly the lever's friggin' useless.
Have you seen what the housing for that lever looks like?
So it is a giant metal box. The main column.
So there's the lever
on
right?
top.
And does it have like you push it down and there's a gap in between like
There is a gap there, yes.
Okay, so I'm formulating my new theory
of something
as we go.
stuck in it.
That little prankster McGee over here is like, oh, this will be fun. There will be like a little blast of air, but there's particulate, and in that particulate is a little stone that gets blown up and kicked up into the housing, which functionally jams the throttle, and that could have happened pretty easily when that X, we're talking about that train X, where it like jumps.
Yep.
That something could have popped up in there, basically just jams that lever into full throttle position.
That would be an amazing coincidence because there's not. So
yeah, but I mean,
so to jam it, whatever detritus you're making up in this scenario would have to come onto. So if the lever's in the 9 o'clock position, it would have to jam from the 3 o'clock side to keep the lever pushed down and in that position.
It couldn't have just been in the. I'm
couldn't have been
imagining
in
it goes.
It couldn't have been in under the gap between the 9 o'clock position and the center of the clock position because the lever raises up. So there,
I don't know.
It could have been in the backside. But one thing that I did find interesting in the stuff that Joe had earlier that may account for this is that if there's something wrong with the control, Newson could have very well just said, "Okay, it's screwed. I'm gonna pull pressure off and let the dead man switch go." Except according to this guy's information about the maintenance systems, it was notorious for that some of those tubes, or not notorious, but some of those tubes would corrode because it's air, and air systems are notorious for having water in them.
We got condensation.
Condensation, so it corrodes.
Also with England.
And it gets
That's a good
crud in
point.
it. And it seals, and suddenly there's the pressure that should be released from the pushing down of the lever or the letting go of it is maintained by whatever crud is in the line has fused it shut. So there's that also possibility. That's more of the brakes fail side, but there's a lot of stuff in this. I mean, it's such an intricate, complicated machine.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, they're more complicated than you think, and I do find the poor maintenance theory to be at least a little bit compelling.
Yeah.
I think it's super compelling.
Yeah.
It also, gives. There's a good reason for the inquest to have covered it up, right? You don't want mass hysteria of people suddenly thinking, "Oh my God, the public transportation system is no longer safe."
Some heads are going to roll.
Right? It's really easy to just say, "This
the
guy
driver did
who
it.
died is responsible." Pass the buck onto a dude who has already paid the ultimate sacrifice. Really, you're not really slandering that much of his life. I presume that his widow still got her, pension checks and all of that stuff. So to me, it makes perfect sense that there was some huge maintenance error and there was like a large cover-up.
Sure.
Just for public.
From a conspiracy standpoint, that makes sense.
Well,
You're right.
and the guys on the platform who witnessed him standing there staring straight ahead, there were how many?
I think there's at least a half dozen statements.
Oh, were there that many people, really?
Yeah, people were waiting to catch the train to go the other direction.
Yeah, but wasn't there
one of them
something
was an employee.
Wasn't there something in that thing that you had that said most of the eyewitness reports were actually given by people who were employed by the underground?
Well, exactly. They were members of the trade union in the underground, and so
right, because there's guys that work there. There's guys that there's guards and stuff like that. Yeah, so there is.
So these were guys who maybe went along with the whole thing because they were probably told by their bosses that hey, you'll be rewarded for just saying that you saw this, and all those guys probably saw nothing.
And there is stuff that says that I can't. Oh gosh, I wish I had his name. I think it was the guard. He was it was the guard. I think was immediately taken by the police to the police station and questioned
and held for a really long time,
and then taken for a walk to clear his head.
Yeah,
like there's
18-year-old Harris, right?
Yeah. There's some hinky conspiracy level stuff that you're like, whoa, well that doesn't make a lick of sense.
Yeah, and the thing about it is when you've got this smooshed up train that's just literally a just twisted up piece of wreckage, it's going to be really hard to prove mechanical failure.
Although I got to tell you, people reconstruct crashed airplanes and they figure stuff out.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing though, is that if you can, let's suppose, for example, you're one of the head of say, the trade unions, and you're also, part of the transportation thing in the Labor Party. So this is your gig, your responsibility. Now, do you really want a detailed inquiry into what's really going on with all these maintenance issues and people stripping the trains and stealing crap? Do you really want that, or do you want to put this issue to rest as quickly as you possibly can?
Which they did.
Yeah. They sure did.
2 days, I think it took.
Yeah.
The inquest actually was 4 days,
including lunch breaks.
Which by the way, today would be. How long would it take?
Yeah. 8, 16, 32 hours is the amount of time that it took to compile everything in
all
session.
The testimony.
Whereas for today, those investigations take 1 to 3 years.
Months,
Yeah.
Maybe?
But yeah, that's the thing about it to me. It was the whole by getting it right out there right away. Oh, saw the driver. He was just standing there staring straight ahead. Obviously, he did it. I mean, that just obviates the need for any sort of strict inquiry into what was really going on.
This guy obviously
In the
screwed up,
underground,
is what
in
they're
the-
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and that headed off a lot of unpleasantness for a lot of people.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. And
It's not that crazy of a conspiracy theory.
No, it's not.
It's not. But I did read one other thing that made me wonder, maybe to a degree, if that they were right and it was operator error. And that's our final theory, which is that he made a massive mistake. So if we go back to controls of the train, we talked about how much pressure it takes to push it down from 3 o'clock. And then once it's in the 6 o'clock position, a little bit of pressure to keep it down, but then to go to the 9 o'clock position and to keep downward pressure on it is not easy because that's a straight arm thing.
Yeah.
Let's say he's not doing what you suggested, which is leaning on it.
Well, I'm envisioning leaning on at 6. Right?
Okay.
At 9, it would be hard.
Yeah, well, at 6 o'clock, it's right in front of you. Put your
just-
arm straight down, and
Or
you
you
just
just put your shoulder on it.
Right. Okay, so let's go back to the engines, and briefly I talked about they had a low gear and kind of a high gear scenario. So the electric engines, just to get the details covered, they had, this is from I'm not an electrical engineer, so please nobody, just put me on the spit for this, but...
Actually, they're motors, not engines. Just if you don't want people making fun of you.
Or for Joe to put me
Yeah.
on the engine, the thing, because I called it an engine instead of a motor.
Yeah.
Or it's a motor, not an engine,
Yeah,
or the other way around.
that's a motor,
Exactly.
not an engine. Yeah.
Okay.
Calm
so
down.
the point is that from an electrical perspective, they had what they refer to as full series, which was the low gear, and then there was full parallel, which was the high gear, the 9 o'clock position.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was an interesting little catch in the whole system, which is that once the control was at that 9 o'clock full parallel position, the high gear, the driver could pull the handle back to the 6 o'clock position, and as long as nothing interrupted the speed of the train, it would stay in high gear. So even though it should be transitioning down to low gear, unless the driver moved it back towards 3 o'clock to disengage the motors and reset it, it would stay in high gear. So what
So
I
it kind of neutralizes the whole dead man switch thing, huh?
Well, it does to a degree, because now drivers did it all the time, because it's much, you cycle up, you get to speed, and then you pull it back to the 6 o'clock from 9 to 6.
Then you put your elbow on it and lean on it.
Right, because it's much easier to hold at the 6 o'clock than the 9 o'clock position. Well, I wondered, because about a week prior to this whole thing, or I think it was the Monday of that week, or maybe the Monday before, he was reported to have missed a stop by several cars. He didn't stop in time, and he hadn't been on the job but a year, and it doesn't sound like he was doing any of the major lines. But if the experienced guys are doing this, and somebody says, "Oh, hey, Newsom, here's a trick. This will make so you're not keeping your arm locked out, your shoulder's not going to hurt, yada, yada, yada," tells him how to do it, but he doesn't get exactly how the motors and the pattern works. So he thinks, okay, I pulled it into the 6 o'clock position, we're going. And he thinks the process is he has to go from 9 to 6 to 3 to disengage the motor incorrectly, rather than just kicking it over to the 3.
Alternately, he just has the timing wrong.
He has something about the operation of that little trick wrong. He could have stopped late that time a week ago and then said, well, let me give it a try again, and accidentally put it, not understanding, put it into high gear and kept it into high gear when he thought that he was shifting it into low.
Or just something broke off inside.
Well,
inside the switch.
again, that's at the mechanical level. I just looked at this and thought, well, this is behavior that drivers did to operate. I wonder if a guy not knowing the right way to do that trick could completely screw it up.
I have
Seems
a hard
like a
time
pretty simple
believing
trick,
that.
huh?
It
Yeah.
seems really simple,
Especially
but
when
know
you
what?
have a break right there.
You know, that's true, except I see people driving down the street. The simple thing is you make a turn, and if your turn signal doesn't turn off, you turn your turn signal off. Yet I see people driving down the freeway for 15 minutes with their damn turn signal on.
I recently-
That's a simple thing, but doesn't mean people do it
I
right.
recently found out that newer cars often don't have a sound associated with blinkers.
Really?
Yeah, so that explains why people are not doing that, because they don't know that their blinkers.
Oh,
Only
no.
for cars that are, 2 or 3 years old, not for the last 60 years of history.
Well, I know
Yeah.
that for me, it's something about my particular height. My steering wheel always blocks the turn signal indicator.
You can
Why?
adjust that.
It does, but I haven't.
But why?
And-
Yeah.
But and so I do that. I find myself doing that sometimes if I'm on the freeway because I'm getting so much freeway noise I can't hear it.
Yeah.
And I can't see it because the steering wheel's blocking it. So it's just like.
So I just think, but
But anyway,
back to the
why are
theory.
we on
Back to
that?
the theory. The point is that I think that he may have screwed up in trying to do something with the controls.
I don't know if this is something wrong with me or like what, but I'm way more prone to believe that there's like wide systematic problems with
You're
stealing.
that people wanted to keep quiet about. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's,
than like one dude who seems like a wholesome guy making a big mistake like that.
I would think that if it were me and I was heading to the end of the line at a dead end, and not by dead end we mean solid wall, brick wall, I would be more inclined to use the balls out thing earlier in the line, and then be a little more conservative in my approach to the final station at the end of the line.
Yeah, I guess I
that's-
agree. I wouldn't be trying out that new thing
Although-
unless I knew
Yeah,
there was
not-
a lot of.
not- at that
From
spot.
what I
Yeah.
understand, it sounds like Newsom was working the short run a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe he had been told that he was going to give the opportunity to work one of the longer lines, and he wanted to figure this thing out before he was on the longer line, and it was a bad idea. Again, I don't think that's what it is, but because I read about that driving habit, it always piques my interest, and I have to ask. I always have to ask the question.
It seems like even if he'd sort of forgotten the whole thing, he still would have figured it out before the end.
You would think so, yeah.
You would think
Which
so.
then makes me inclined to believe that either something was wrong with the drive system or something was wrong with the brakes. The weird thing about the drive system is, you remember how I talked about the motors? They have the full parallel and the high gear and low gear, full parallel, full series.
By parallel and series.
Don't ask me, Joe.
No, I know what they mean, but the question is are we talking about more than one motor or more than one battery or both?
Don't ask me. What I want to talk about is the fact that when the wheels of the train disconnected from the track, it reset the motor to whatever the current setting of the drive control is. So, for example, if it's in high gear, or it thinks it's in high gear, but the driver's put it in low, and it runs across that X, the motor disconnects from the system momentarily as it goes over those gaps, which would drop it into low gear. So that's why
it's not receiving electrical input from the outside.
Yes,
Yeah.
which makes me not quite 100% sure that I believe that there was a breakage or a lockup in the drive control system, and more inclined to think that maybe there was something wrong with the braking system.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. I think we're going to need to take a trip to London. I think they have one of these things in a museum. We can take it apart.
No, we'll just go to the Isle of Wight.
Yeah, that's true. They're
running around on the Isle of Wight.
Yeah, we'll just
Yeah.
take
And they're
it
even
apart.
up above ground, so we don't even have to get
Dirty
in the tunnel and crawl around and look at things.
Let's do it. Yeah,
All right.
that's what I
Let's do
say.
Okay.
But
Well,
yeah.
we've exhausted this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go, but yeah, final theory, I'm going to go for the conspiracy to just hush up a lot of malfeasance.
I agree.
Okay.
It's malfeasance for malfeasance's sake.
Malfeasance all around.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep,
Okay.
I think so.
Well, if you want to read any of the material that we have, we will be putting at least some of the links up on our website. The website is, of course, thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. You can look through all of our episodes. We have an episode list available as an individual page, so you can search through there to find stories you want. We also have other stuff on the website, such as merchandise. So through Zazzle and Redbubble, we have shirts and mugs and all kinds of different things available, stickers. So go through that and look through those. We will, of course, have this episode on all of the streaming services. So if you're using Stitcher or Google Play or whatever service you want, we are on there, and so you can find all the back catalog. We're, of course, also on iTunes, which is where a lot of folks find us. If you're on iTunes, you're a user of iTunes, do take the time to leave a comment and a rating. That does help us out, and that helps other folks find the show, which is the most important thing. We are on all of the social media, so we're on Twitter at ThinkIn Sideways without the G in the middle. We are on Facebook with Facebook group and Facebook page, so like the page, join the group, lots of fun conversations constantly going on about in there. And you've got questions, you've got concerns, you disagree with a theory, or you have a theory of your own, feel free to let us know. You can send us an email. Our email address is thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. And we're still replying to every email. We're getting slower about it, but we're still replying to every email that comes through. Sometimes it takes us a couple of days.
Or a week.
Or something.
Yeah.
Depends.
So, I guess with that, I'm going to motor on out of here.
No puns for me.
Yeah, I'm just going to say bye.
All punned out.
Just going to go crash.
God.
Bye.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data to formulate a reply. What?
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Thinking Sideways, the podcast. I'm Devin, joined as usual by
Steve.
Joe.
And I apologize for my lack of enthusiasm. It's not a real lack of enthusiasm. It's just that I have a cold that's waging war with my body right now.
The creeping crud.
It's the creeping crud.
It's going to send you waging war
So,
with our bodies since we're trapped in a tiny studio.
I'm sure we all have it at this point. So I apologize if my voice cracks or anything. I think we're going to be okay.
Hopefully.
I'll take pauses for hydration if we need to, but just know I'm sorry if I get overexcited and my voice just loses.
That sounds good. Okay.
Okay, everybody, let's just do this mystery now.
My voice is going to sound a little funny because I'm going to put on a hazmat suit now.
We'll stick the mic in there with you, don't worry.
Yeah, okay.
So today we're gonna do something we haven't done in a long time, which is a cryptid.
Yeah!
And cryptozoology, and we're gonna go talk about the Mothman.
You mean moth person?
Oh, okay, yeah, the moth person.
Okay,
maybe.
yeah.
This also listener suggestion, a really long time ago, I think.
Yeah. Who?
I think it was Tom.
Tom or Thomas?
Yeah, which he had a
It's
lot
been a
of suggestions.
long
Yeah, it's been a
time.
long time. Probably at least a year. I apologize it took us so long to get to it.
Well, and I know this came through recently on Twitter too. So
Yeah, we've gotten
obviously
a couple.
people want it.
Yeah, I guess.
The Mothman is a very popular one.
Apparently, yes. So I wrote a nice little lead-in, which I totally ruined with all of our other stuff. So I'm just gonna read it. Everybody, get ready.
Okay, let's hear it.
All right, cuddle by the fire, everybody. From November 1966 to December 1967, or maybe as late as 2000, West Virginia, in the area of Point Pleasant, kind of the middle of the western border of the state, was plagued by sightings of a very mysterious kind. That was good, right? Why did I just run over that?
It was
Doesn't
good.
matter.
Yeah, that's all
I'm glad
scary.
you didn't skip it.
Yeah, Mothman is perhaps 6 or 7 feet tall when standing. He can fold his wings and walk with this weird kind of shuffle. People talk about it being penguin-like.
So it's a 6-foot tall penguin?
But
maybe-
penguins don't fly, so
Maybe his pants are just down around his ankles.
maybe that's it.
Yeah.
When he flies, his wings kind of just unfold. He has arms too, right? So that it's not, he doesn't lift up his arms and their wings. He unfolds his wings from his back.